I want to bring up this. This is from the Hamilton Spectator. Now, I know this is from last year. This is from April 20th, 2024. Since it's been updated, but it originally written in 2023. And you'll see why I bring up this old article, because it relates to what happened over the weekend in Toronto. But I want to read off of this. So the Hamilton Spectator says, hate in Ontario is at a linchpin moment. We're either going to keep it in the grenade or we're going to see some things explode. A Metroland investigation found a rise in hate crimes across the province and few convictions to match. The pain is deep, but solutions are in the works. So, looking down on the city of Hamilton from a snowy cliff, their hands wrapped in boxing gloves, the small group of white nationalists stood shoulder to shoulder and raised their right arms in a Nazi salute. Community activists raising a boxing glove at the top of a mountain, symbolizing our will to fight and struggle for our folk, family, and future, reads the caption under the photo taken from Sam Lawrence Park, a popular vista atop the Niagara Escarpment, and posted to the social media site Telegram. The post also includes a video of the men masked to hide their identities, throwing untorted punches at each other in sloppy sparring matches. The group, calling itself Nationalist 13, has been growing on Telegram, a popular digital den for white nationalists. There were only a handful of members when it started in June, but has now more than 1,000 followers. Online, the group targets Black people, politicians, Jewish people, and the LGBTQ community, particularly transgender people. For several months, Nationalist 13 has crept out of the digital shadows as a gang of vandals proudly claiming responsibility for placing neo-Nazi propaganda stickers on lampposts, playgrounds, street signs, and other public structures, largely around Hamilton. They have also joined anti-drag show protests and, in their visible acts to date, engaged in combat-style training in Hamilton parks and waved white nationalist flags from a Red Hill Valley Parkway overpass. But the extremist group is not operating in a vacuum. It is certainly not alone. There is a rise tide of hate in Ontario, although much of it not the work of organized groups like this. Hate incidents from assaults to vandalism has been increasing in Ontario for several years, with police services reporting 612 incidents in 2016 and nearly triple that in 2021 with 1,600. The trend is reflected nationally, where police reported hate crimes jumped from 1,900 in 2019 to 3,300 in 2021, a 72% increase. The majority of these incidents are non-violent, with the charge of mischief, which includes vandalism, being the most common criminal charge laid by police. The police statistics don't reflect the true state of hate in the province. Police and anti-hate groups say many hate incidents go unreported, although how many is difficult to determine. The rise in hatred is happening against a backdrop of deepening political divisions and a decline in civility fed by economic strife, exacerbated by online extremism, fueled by the Freedom Convoy movement. You see, you can tell exactly the direction they're trying to swing this, and embraced by some politicians and political parties. So notice how, they're reflecting on the fact that there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of violence out there, but a lot of them is not reported. They're saying that it's a wildfire, it's a spree of all these hate crimes that are happening. It's affecting Jewish people, it's affecting trans people, it's affecting the LGBTQ. But none of it gets reported. Why is that the case? Why is that the case? If it's a hate crime, a heinous assault on an individual in the province of Ontario to another Canadian, why does it go unreported? That's the interesting part. That's the thing that is very, very telling about that article, especially the fact that they directly named the Freedom Convoy as part of those hate groups. You know, the organization that brought truckers, teachers, lawyers, doctors, stock boys, you know, general laborers, all sorts of people gathered together on the cold streets in Ottawa to celebrate Canada and to unify on a strong front against the mandates that were crushing Canadians. That wasn't exactly a hate group. That was not a hate group. They want to play it as is because you know that it got fabricated through the news media when they were trying to push that the truckers and the Freedom Convoy were white nationalists, they were xenophobic, they were homophobic, which was not the case whatsoever. That was a complete lie. They know it's a lie. They got caught with that lie, and yet the mainstream media is still pushing it because they don't want Canadians unified on a strong front. They don't want Canadians of all walks of life to gather together to fight the good fight when it comes to corruption, when it comes to government overreach, when it comes to mandates, when it comes to unscientific, proven detriment to Canadian citizens. Notice how they named the Freedom Convoy right in the article, but they don't say anything about, I don't know, all the other suspicious hate crimes that go unreported. It's very telling to that. So here's the picture here that they mentioned about at the start of the story. So there's the individuals there on the top of that mountain there overlooking Hamilton. There's them with the boxing gloves, and it says underneath it, community activists raising a boxing glove at the top of a mountain, symbolizing our will to fight and struggle for our folk, family, and future. Now, I don't know about this group. I don't, you know, I'm not defending them. That's not the point of this. But I'm saying that it's very, very suspicious. It's very suspicious that right at this moment, right about now, all of a sudden, we're seeing the rise of hatred in the country, even though we know that the mainstream media and politicians like to sow division in this country. We saw that with the election. We saw people that were chanting elbows up for Mark Carney, and the Pierre Poilievre supporters were not getting along. There was constant butting heads. There's still constant butting heads. So unifying the country is not doing well when it comes to political grounds. Politicians aren't able to unify the country. And it's causing this stir, it's causing this mayhem that all of a sudden, this group that doesn't really have much attention, they say it has 1,000 followers, but that's barely anything. In Ontario, that's nothing. You know how many people live in Toronto alone? 1,000 people is minuscule. So I don't know anything about this group. I don't know anything about this situation. But the reason I bring that article to attention is because this Nationalist 13 group was recently spotted in Toronto over the weekend. So members of the Nationalist 13 Toronto Fitness Club, Pontiac Active Club, along with cognates of Manitoba Active Club, chant for Silo Hendricks at our demonstration this morning. And this guy, Clyde Do Something, says, "Tell me you work for the federal government without telling me you work for the federal government." This is what's so telling about this, is because this group, much like we see in the United States commonly, is masked up. They're wearing dark clothing. You cannot identify them. And they're somehow all organized together. The very few of them that are at the exhibition place in Toronto, they're all masked up. You can't see their face. They're all wearing ski masks. They're all wearing in black. And they're chanting for Silo Hendricks at this demonstration. Which not a lot of people even know what that is. I don't even know what that is. So it's very, very, very telling that this was an inside op. That this Nationalist 13 that really just appeared out of nowhere. We don't know the origins. We don't know. And again, I don't know anything about this group until this story came out. But here's them chanting in front of the exhibition place in Toronto just after Mark Carney got elected, telling Canadians that he's going to unify the country. So it just, the timing of all this also adds to the suspicion. Listen to this.
Shiloh Hendricks! Did nothing wrong! Shiloh Hendricks! Did nothing wrong! Shiloh Hendricks! Did nothing. Shiloh Hendricks!
And you notice the banners that they're holding on there. So there's one that says DI is how nations die.
Hendricks!
Mass deportations now. And what was the last one say? Registration saves our nation. So just 3 random slogans from masked up individuals that we cannot identify. How many times have we seen this before? How many times have we seen this before where we've seen federal agents, and this is admitted, federal agents posing as civilians, dressing up in full black gear or full white or whatever color to camouflage them, going out to the streets, pretending to be ordinary people, chanting ridiculous slogans and tirades to try to stir up controversy, to try to stir up chaos. We saw that with January 6th. We saw that with the, Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys or the Boogaloo Boys in the United States. You see that when they went to the, was it Idaho or Iowa, the Pride Parade that they were trying to crash, and then they realized that, they were federal agents. Or the fake kidnapping of the Michigan governor. Those are federal insiders posing as civilians to stir up controversy, to say that there's a growing number of hate. And they're hoping that something like this will scare the bejesus out of the ordinary person just seeing this for the first time, scare them enough that the government will respond with a crackdown of authoritarian measure. That's what they're hoping for this. That's what we saw with January 6th. That's what we saw a lot with the United States. Now it's our turn. They're hoping that people are looking at this, not scratching their head going, why are they all masked up if they're supposed neo-Nazis? It just doesn't add up. They're hoping it scares the bejesus out of someone to beg the government for authoritarian measure. Like cracking down on free speech. They're hoping for that. They're hoping that scares you into complicity. So let's see this again. Watch this again.
Shiloh Hendricks! Did nothing wrong! Shiloh Hendricks! Did nothing wrong! Shiloh Hendricks! Did nothing wrong!
And they're chanting, Shiloh Hendricks did nothing wrong. Again, I don't know the full story of this. I don't know the full story of why they're chanting that, why they have specifically those banners. But I know that it is very, very, very telling that all of a sudden, news articles coming out of the Toronto Star, the Hamilton Spectator, the National Post, all these different, everyone's talking about how the hatred in Canada is rising. We saw that a lot after October 7th because that was when the Zionist crowd were trying to fuel up this controversy, fuel up the chaos to go after and crack down on pro-Palestine voices. They were trying to crack down on college campuses, much like they did in the United States, that they're not deporting people at mass rates, thank God. But this is all part of the scheme. This is all part of the scheme to scare people, to manufacture fear into people so that people will then beg for authoritarian measures like eliminating free speech in this country or mandating that you're not allowed to go out or 15 minutes late or whatever the case may be. It's to scare people into complicity. And this is how they do it. They pose people as civilians You have no idea who they are, but I'm sure that CBC, CTV, Global, City News, they're all going to cover this if they do cover it and say that, oh, there's a hate march going down Toronto. Well, who are these people? Who are they? Identify them. Oh, we can't because they're masked up. Well, how convenient. How convenient. So, and this has actually happened before in a smaller scale. So, this was last year in front of Jackson Square, where it's, again, it says mass deportation now. So they're trying to take conservative voices or more conservative slogans and use that to, again, bait people, fearmonger people, that this is what, Pierre Poilievre wants. This is what conservatives want. This is what right-wingers want. It's trying to scare people into being compliant for a possible authoritarian government. That's what they're doing here. That's what all this is about. To get random people to line up completely dressed in black with ski masks covering their entire face, chanting ridiculous slogans, hoping to scare people. And it looks like even from that photo, it's not working. Just from that photo alone, people are passing by. They don't care. They don't care. They're just like, oh, they're just rando idiots standing chanting. What have you? I'm going to go and get my Starbucks now. I'm going to go enjoy my life. I don't know. That's probably what they're thinking because it doesn't look effective here. So Billboard Chris says this was in Toronto. Not a chance this is legit. It is 100% an op. Right-wingers don't dress like Antifa. Chanting Shiloh Hendricks did nothing wrong. Did Canada recruit Democratic operatives from down south? Because that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like here. It completely looks like a federal CIA, FBI operation. This is stuff you would see on the States every single time. Anytime they want to shut down dissent, anytime they want to scare people, or they want to shut down a grassroots movement, there's always some sort of insider that poses as a civilian to go in and cause chaos. So that movement or that discussion gets immediately smacked down and people get scared to be compliant with authoritarian measures. And not only is it happening in Toronto with this, but in Montreal, when they did the pro-Palestine march, and there was news coverage, we covered it on this channel here, when there was news coverage of the pro-Palestine marches, there was individuals dressed in black, same as this, deliberately breaking down storefronts. They were smashing windows. They were causing property damage. And as I stated, that seems very suspicious considering the rest of the crowd that were just protesting, peacefully protesting, exercising their right of freedom of assembly, were just holding up posters. They weren't masked up. They just had their faces. They were holding up posters. They were chanting Free Palestine and just being peaceful. And even the organizers who organized that protest remained peaceful and told people to stay peaceful. But you had agitators coming out of nowhere causing property damage. Why? Again, to scare people so that people now associate Free Palestine with breaking down windows. The same thing they did with the Freedom Convoy. The same thing they did with January 6th. It's all part of the PSYOP. So, no doubt, this is all manufactured. And in relation to something like this, we've shown this before, when the National Post said secret RCMP report warns Canadians might revolt when they realize how broke they are. Now, what's interesting is you could see the picture here. This is from the Freedom Convoy. Look at the average Canadian protester. Do you see them in black ski masks, all wearing black, standing in a line, holding up a banner, chanting some person's name as innocent? Or do you see just Canadians that come from different backgrounds that are just trying to unite together to stop authoritarian governments overreaching their rights and liberties as a Canadian? Because that's what I see there. And it looks a lot different than this. So, to associate that, to associate the Nationalist 13 to the Freedom Convoy is absurd. But that's what they're trying to do. They're hoping that you get scared by what happened in Toronto and associate that to what happened with the Freedom Convoy. They're hoping that's the case. They're hoping they can easily conflate the two, that anyone, any Canadian that organizes a protest, brings people together, unifies the country, true unity in this country based on a common goal, is immediately shut down because it will scare the bejesus out of all the others. Scare people into compliancy. That's what this was about. And no doubt, Canadians would be protesting on the street if they knew how broke we are. That's why they don't tell people. That's why there's mass censorship. That's why Mark Carney wants to censor more of the internet. Because they don't want people like me to blurt that out. Because word spreads. And if word spreads, word gets out, a lot of people would be on the streets. As I said, no matter who gets in office, we should be on the streets already. Because Mark Carney is not going to save this country. Pierre Poilievre is not going to save this country. Jagmeet Singh was not going to save this country. We have digged ourselves far into a grave to get ourselves out. And the only way to stop it is not through electorally, it's through grassroots action. It's through citizens uprising against an authoritarian government. That's the only way to get through to that situation. And also, the final piece of this puzzle is the whole reason Mark Carney got elected or selected, as we explore further into this sham election. Just remember, people, that when Mark Carney was announced to replace Justin Trudeau, The Independent revealed the whole game, saying Mark Carney failed to stop Brexit, but hopes to save Canada from populism. Meaning that if we get Mark Carney, a central banker from the WEF and the Century Initiative, a guy who hasn't been in this country for over 10 years, who has been a key advisor for Justin Trudeau when it came to carbon taxes, when it comes to net zero policies, when it comes to harming individual provinces and individual people. He was installed by a higher power to deliberately go after Canadians, because that is what populism is. Populism is this. Populism is when you get an entire nation, a majority of the entire nation, coming together on common key issues that affect everybody. And what Mark Carney wants is none of that. He doesn't want unity. He wants to sow more division so that he can bait and distract you by yelling at conservatives, by yelling at liberals, by yelling at the NDP, by yelling at young people, old people, no matter who the case is. He wants to distract you and bait you so that he can come in and conquer over you. And that is why this is all timingly suspicious of why there's masked individuals immediately in downtown Toronto at Exhibition Place, all masked up. We have no idea where they came from, no identities, no police record, and just chanting random slogans, hoping to scare people. But I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's scaring anybody. It's raising eyebrows. It's causing a lot of suspicion that you can't believe our government would copy something the Americans have been always doing. I thought we were supposed to hate each other. I thought that was the whole point. We were done with the relationship to America. But yet I see gerrymandering, I see the crackdown of dissent, I see scaring people, I see uh, political operatives, I see all of this that happened in America that we should know better. We should not be copying those mistakes of America, but it's being implemented here. Why? Because they want to crush down on populism in this country. And the only way to do so is to scare the bejesus out of someone by manufacturing consent, manufacturing this whole operation that this nationalist group, this white supremacist group, which according, just watching that short little clip, I can't tell if they're white nationalists. I can't tell who they are. I don't know who these people are, but they're all dressed in black. They have no facial recognition whatsoever, and they just appear out of nowhere chanting words that people will not understand, holding up banners of just random politicized slogans, hoping to scare people. And they try to do that in the United States. It hasn't worked to the same extremity, and now they're trying to do it with Canadians. After they elected Mark Carney, the central banker that wants to further divide this country. It's all an inside operation.